Nick Saban has built and evolved his almost unstoppable Crimson Tide dynasty on one very important mantra. When your success or failure depends on your ability to beat the crap out of the man in front of you, weight classes exist for a reason. If you are the bigger, stronger, and meaner team on the field, more often than not, you're also going to be the team that wins the game. Saban has lived by, recruited by, and coached by that philosophy for over a decade now at Alabama, and he's been rewarded with an absolutely incredible run, averaging nearly 12 wins a year, and by the end of this year, most likely averaging a championship run once every 2 seasons. Meanwhile, during that time, the Washington Redskins have not been the biggest, strongest, or meanest team on the field, and as a result, their win-loss record looks just how you would expect it to. Jay Gruden's record as a head coach was 28-35-1 coming into the 2018 season, and his name was firmly on the hot seat as the Redskins front office witnessed many other teams around them going from worst to first almost instantly, while Washington just sort of stagnated. And it wasn't like the Skins had some insurmountable lack of talent either. They had a young quarterback on the rise in Kirk Cousins, a talented offensive line with some great young pieces, and some premium players on defense that could make opposing quarterbacks' lives a living hell. On paper, this team should have had more success, but they were just never able to make it happen. They were not big enough, they were not strong enough, but way more importantly, they were not tough enough. For all the talent that Washington did have, their culture wasn't ready to beat people up to get a win. Enter the Alabama Crimson Tide and the aura of invincibility that all of their players carry with them every single day. The Redskins knew they had a culture problem, so they made a concerted effort during the last 2 years to infuse Nick Saban's weight class philosophy into their own program to recreate his success. And they did that mainly by bringing in Saban's own star pupils from the past. Jonathan Allen and Ryan Anderson, once the leaders of Bama's championship defense, were brought in as first and second round draft picks in 2017. Sean Dion Hamilton was added as a 6th rounder just this year, and only 2 days before the recording of this episode, the Skins traded for HaHa Clinton Dix, who won 2 championships with the Tide, was a consensus All-American, and later an All-Pro in Green Bay. But perhaps the most important Alabama addition to this defense over the last 2 years, and definitely the one that has made the most impact so far, was Bruce Allen's first-round pick in the 2018 draft, Daron Payne. Payne, at least to me, is the new crown jewel of the Redskins defense, and he embodies both everything that the Alabama program is and what the Redskins want their program to be. Big, strong, and salty as hell. It's no secret why Washington's defense went from one of the absolute worst against the run last season to one of the absolute best this season. It's all about the presence of Daron Payne. 10 of the 11 Skin starters on defense, not including the newly acquired Clinton Dix of course, were on the team last year, and Greg Minuski was the defensive coordinator last year as well. Personnel-wise and scheme-wise, this defense is basically the same thing, even when accounting for a few untimely injuries to Allen and Foster last year. The only major difference in this equation between 2017 and 2018 is Daron Payne, and what a damn big difference he has been. Last year, Washington's defense finished dead last against the run, allowing a staggering 134 yards rushing per game. They allowed the 4th largest yards per carry at 4.5 and the 4th most rushes of 20 or more yards at 14. Teams ran on them nearly 30 times per game just because they could, and as a result, the Redskins' offense finished 20th in average time of possession. This season, however, after the drafting of Payne, the script has flipped. Washington is ranked 2nd in run defense, allowing only 80 yards per game, a full 54 yards down from last year. They're ranked 4th in allowed yards per carry at 3.7, and are one of only 2 teams in the league to still not have allowed a run of over 20 yards, and we're halfway through the season. Teams run on them only 20.9 times per game right now, which is almost a 30% drop from 2017, and that is largely because, quite frankly, offenses are not able to run on them. Without teams being able to run on Washington at will, the Skins' time of possession has jumped up to the 3rd highest average in the league, and keep in mind that all of this has been done against a who's who of running back talent. This defense has not allowed a single running back to rush for more than 61 yards in any single game, and that was while facing the likes of David Johnson, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, and Saquon Barkley. Weirdly enough, Jordan Wilkins, a rookie running back for the Colts, outrushed all of them against this defensive line, but again, it was for only 61 yards. So the moral of the story here, I suppose, is that great nose tackles, as unsexy a position as it may be, matter a whole hell of a lot to the success or failure of a defense. If you have a big side of beef in the middle of your front that can reset the line of scrimmage, stand strong against double teams, and open up opportunities for everyone else, well, all of a sudden the same players and the same scheme that were getting destroyed last year start causing a little destruction of their own. The thing that really jumps out to me when I watch tape on this defense is that A-gap runs are basically pointless now. Gap runs up the gut, wrap plays, power plays, inside zone, anything that comes remotely close to Payne's zip code is completely and utterly pointless. I have yet to see a single center be able to block him one-on-one consistently, and when you look at him at the point of attack, I swear if you slapped an Eagles jersey on him and told me he was Fletcher Cox, I would believe you. He looks exactly the same as Cox when he's stacking on the block, peeking to one side, and then effortlessly shedding to the other side to make the tackle. Defensive line coaches call that two-gapping, by the way, because it's asking your defensive tackle to cover two gaps instead of one, and believe me, it's not easy to do that at an elite level. You have to be exceptionally strong, not just in your upper body, but also in your lower body and in your core to be able to absorb a wall of bodies coming at you, while also keeping your eyes up to look for the running back in the backfield, and then throwing that wall to the side while you make the tackle. There's really not a whole lot of nose tackles in the league that I think can do that consistently enough, where you can rely on them to protect everyone else in the front seven from their own mistakes. For example, even if the outside linebackers miss a tackle in the backfield, or even if the guard gets a good angle on your inside linebackers on the second level, if everyone around that nose tackle is in a bad position or makes a bad mistake, and that nose tackle can still dominate his blocker and make the play all by himself to cover those mistakes up, that's when you know you have someone special. There's nose tackles who eat space all over the league, and then there's nose tackles who eat you when you come into their space, and that's Daron Payne. Stats and tackle numbers be damned, this is the kind of player that transforms the identity, the culture, and the success of a defense overnight just because of plays like that. The thing that I love most about Payne is that not only is he an overwhelmingly strong human being, but for being such a young player, and he was drafted at just 20 years old, mind you, he's already very technically proficient and instinctive as a run stopper. How he uses his hips to turn and adjust his angle while taking on double teams so that he can absorb it and then disengage. I mean, truthfully, it should be in a defensive line textbook. A lot of coaches refer to this technique as an anchor turn, and Payne is already very, very effective with it at the nose. An anchor turn, by the way, for those of you unfamiliar with the terminology, is a way for a defensive lineman to kind of maximize their own leverage and biomechanics in order to not just resist double teams, but completely dig in and stop them dead in their tracks. This is a great example of it here on this short yardage run against the Cowboys a couple weeks ago. Watch Payne take on this double team at the point of attack. As soon as he senses that down block from La'el Collins is coming to try to move him off his spot, watch how he uses his feet and his hips to react to it. That right foot steps wide and slightly behind him, that's his anchor point, while his hips turn away from the down block and he drops that left knee almost to the ground. That adjustment with his hips is the turn part of the anchor turn. And if you're a young defensive lineman watching this, by the way, feel free to pause this video at any time and try this out for yourself to get a better sense of what I mean with all these biomechanics, because in some ways it's a lot easier to understand it when you feel how your own body reacts to these movements. At least for me, when I've coached some younger players, having them mimic the technique they see on film while they watch the film really helps them absorb the information better. Now, back to Payne. As I said, he's putting that anchor foot slightly behind him, dropping that knee, and turning his hips for 3 reasons. 1, putting that foot slightly behind him will make it easier for him to stay balanced and upright when his hips turn about 70 degrees to that direction, because once he's turned in that direction, that foot will already be in a spot where it can kind of widen his base. 2, dropping the knee means his hips drop with it, and if your hips are low and your knees are bent, that means your pad level is low and your leverage is better, and as you probably heard me say a million times before on this channel, the lowest man always wins, so it's important to get low in any way you can. Thirdly, and most importantly, when you turn your hips, it changes which muscle groups are doing all the work, and it changes the angles in which your joints are absorbing the block. Payne turning his hips here allows that anchor foot to essentially be out in front of him after he turns to it, rather than just to his side, which gives his right hip joint more room to stay low and absorb that force. When you think about how a pelvis is built, your leg has more flexibility to move ahead of you rather than flexibility to step out to your side, so by turning and realigning that anchor step to be in front of his pelvis rather than to the side, he's giving that hip joint more room to flex, which means he can bend that hip lower and really dig in with those quads and his glutes, which are where most of his power comes from. And from this spot, even though he is essentially putting everything on only one leg, that right anchor leg, because of how he is turned to maximize the workload of his hips, quads, and glutes, and because he dipped that left knee to give himself better initial leverage, he's able to absorb this double team with almost no movement of the line of scrimmage. He's creating a pile in the hole with his pure strength and stubbornness, which Zeke is then forced to run into for only a yard. I know we don't do a whole lot of biomechanics talk on this channel, but trust me, for all the young defensive linemen that are watching this, biomechanics and understanding how the human body works can provide a massive advantage when you're getting into a war in the trenches. Daron Payne understands how to maximize his biomechanics to amplify his strength, and that knowledge has paid off by turning the interior of this Redskins defensive line into basically a brick wall. And believe me, when teams have to abandon their run game early because it's just not working, that has a profound impact on the rest of the defense. If you can make an offense one-dimensional and force them to try to pass because nothing else works, that's when the rest of the unit can go into hunt mode. That's when Ryan Kerrigan and Jonathan Allen can start to tee off in pass rushing situations. That's when DJ Swearinger and HaHa Clinton Dix can be aggressive in patrolling the middle of the field. And that's when, believe it or not, even Payne can get involved as a pass rusher, which he's pretty damn effective at, relatively speaking, for a 320-pounder. What we are seeing in Washington right now is not just a defense putting it all together in their second year. It's not just an amazing young rookie coming in and making an impact. It's a complete culture change. It's the flat-out reimagining of an entire organization's philosophy, both on and off the field. In an age where the NFL is transitioning to smaller, lighter, faster rosters, the Redskins are saying, "Fuck that, we're just gonna draft a bunch of heavyweights and punch you in the face until you give up." It's a stark contrast to everything that's going on in the league right now, and I gotta admit, I love it. Will the plan always work? No, definitely not. And their losses to the Saints and Colts are great examples of when Washington's own offense can fall behind and set this team back. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like the Redskins have an identity. I feel like they have a direction and a game plan that actually makes sense. Daron Payne is giving them that direction. His presence is what makes this philosophy and the team's overall success possible. I know we all like to award Defensive Rookie of the Year honors to the biggest stat stuffers every season, but Payne is the kind of player that helps those stat stuffers get those stats in the first place. 25 tackles, 3 sacks, and a forced fumble are not sexy numbers halfway through the year. I get it, I really do. And I understand why people would vote for Darius Leonard, Derwin James, Denzel Ward, or Bradley Chubb instead, because all of them are incredible rookies in their own right. But you know what numbers are sexy to me? 5 wins, a game-and-a-half lead in the division, and the complete statistical transformation of an entire defense largely because of one player. This kid is for real, and as long as Washington's success as a team depends on their defensive line's ability to be the biggest, meanest, ass-kickingest dudes on the block, I think they're in pretty good hands.
I'm just a sucker for pain.
Thank you so much for watching this week's episode, which of course was once again helped made possible by our season-long sponsor, MyBookie. If you have some disposable income and you've been looking at the odds every week and thought to yourself, man, I see a really juicy bet that I want to get in on and make some easy money, but you just haven't pulled the trigger, this is a great week to change that because MyBookie is offering all Film Room viewers up to a 100% sign-up bonus on deposits of up to $1,000 with the promo code BRETT at the link in the description below. You can bet on anything from, of course, the NFL, to college football, to basketball, esports, racing, even politics. I'm not even kidding, you can bet on who the next pope will be. I don't know why, but you can, so I'm just throwing that out there. But again, if you want to get in on some NFL or NBA or even election action this weekend, head on over to the link in the description below, enter promo code BRETT when you sign up and deposit, and hopefully you'll go win some money. As for the channel, I will be back again next week with another Film Room episode, and I'll have some more picks against the spread uploaded, I think, later today as well, so keep an eye out for those. I'm not sure what subject I'll be doing for the Film Room next week, but I'll figure that out at some point. Check on my Twitter, because I'm usually going to let you know on there beforehand. So, with that, until next week, later.